I don't even know what day it is.
Well, what's up, everybody? My name's Indy, and the gentleman right there next to me, hanging out in the woods with the pink flowers, that's Mr. Jay Powell from Powell Group Consulting, and this is Indie Game Business today.
Why?
What?
Why you gotta hate on my Nook's cranny, man? That's just mean.
Yeah, well, it's better than your cranny's Nook.
Timmy and Tommy are in there working their little raccoon asses off, because they buy everything. I'm supporting small businesses, Andy.
Supporting small businesses, and that's a good to do in these times. And we have a special guest, Ryan Sumo. Hi, Ryan.
Hey. Hi, guys. How you doing?
Doing good.
Welcome to the show, Ryan. So Ryan is got his own studio now, but in the past he's worked on things like Prison Architect and another one that I can't remember off the top of my head because it's like that kind of day, Ryan. But let's start like where we always start and tell us how you actually got in the industry, and then walk us through what you've done up to this point.
Sure. So thanks again for having me. So I'm not sure we mentioned earlier to the viewers that I'm from the Philippines. So a long way off from where you guys are. And,
we lost Jay there. And he's back.
All right. Okay.
I hit the wrong button.
We'll have to punish you for that.
Okay, where was I? Okay,
you're from the Philippines.
I am in the Philippines. It is 12 midnight here right now where I am, just because of time zone differences. So I got in the industry, I'd say, maybe 15 years ago. So fresh out of college, I worked in a call center. It's never a happy place to work for a very long time. I answered an ad for a company that was looking for a mobile games artist. And so you guys might remember this. I'm not sure how old your listeners are, but this was like making mobile games back when Nokia was the big dog. And
Snake.
Yeah, so we were. Yeah, we were making. Well, it was a little bit more advanced than Snake. Like they had like the color screens. Like those were the big things back then. So we were making the language I think was called like J2ME. We were making really simple games, like kind of Game & Watch style games, and I was providing the art. Yeah, I kind of just jumped from one company to another. Then I like to tell people that I complain about Steam all the time, like the revenue share and everything. It could always be better, right? But like back in the day, like we were working not like on an app store or a marketplace, but like directly with like telco companies. And so like they were like the gatekeepers, and like the revenue shares were basically flipped, right? Like they earned the 70 and you earned the 30, and so it was a much more difficult like marketplace especially for like a small company at that time. So not a lot of them survived.
People don't remember that, but yeah, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and it's like when we were doing casual games 15 years ago, Big Fish would take 70%.
Right.
So yeah, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean it's like it's good to have that. I mean, in just as perspective, right? We're never going to stop asking for more revenue from Steam or whatever marketplace, but still, it's been a big change. And yeah, so like after that company, I just kind of jumped from one company to another as they went out of business because it was really hard to maintain a games business back then. And I guess like probably the turning point for me was in like 2007. I was approached from this guy he was making a DS game, and he saw like my art on DeviantArt of all places, and he's like, hey, like I like your work. I'm working on a DS game right now, and would you like to work for me? And so like I left my job and kind of worked for him. he was shipping the game around to publishers around 2008 when the financial collapse happened, and he also went out of business. And I was kind of out of work. I was out of work. I had like literally a few months before his business went under, I'd put money down on a mortgage. So I was like really, really in a tight spot. And there weren't a lot of local businesses like doing games here. This is like maybe 2010 or like 2008, 2009. So what I did was I became a freelance artist. And like it was really, really early days for this kind of stuff, but I figured, like I had nothing to lose, well, except for the condo that I put the mortgage down on. But like my best like shot at keeping this thing going was to do freelance. And I was a freelancer for a very long time. Then it came to a point where people were starting to notice like my work. I worked on this like classic game called Space Chem. A bunch of like more programmer centric people out there will probably remember that. And after Space Chem, that's when the Prison Architect guys noticed my work and they reached out to me. That was 2011, and I worked on Prison Architect until 2015. And when that launched out of early access in 2015, I felt like I'd kind of I'd sort of reached the top of the mountain, I guess, in terms of like freelance work. Like there's no way like I could get on a bigger game than Prison Architect, and so that's when I decided that like I maybe it's time to start doing my own games. And I happened to be working on a prototype at that point. I found a publisher, and they just liked the game enough so that they gave us some money, and we started the company. So we've been in business since 2015. The company is called Squeaky Wheel. Like our biggest game so far, what keeps the lights on, is called Academia School Simulator. We're working on that right now. We're hoping to release that sometime this year. And at the same time, we're helping out another local studio, and like they're also launching a game. It's called Rueben Ark. It's going to launch in early access this year, and I'm hoping that that'll do well, so that we can keep going and like kind of support the local industry here.
So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that we want to talk about is we have folks on from around the world occasionally, and we always like to get a good idea of what's the market like where you are. So
right,
I mean, can you give us an overview of the Philippine game market in general, and what platforms work best, all that sort of stuff, genres?
Sure. So like I'm obviously gonna have to be speaking like really broad strokes, but so we have like a population of 90 million people, and to get a good idea of what like the market is like, I think if I remember correctly, like credit card penetration, which means like how many people have actual credit cards to like buy stuff online or on Steam or whatever, I think is less than 30%. I could be right. It might even be much smaller than that. So like there's a very small number of people that like have like the disposable income to buy games. So that's one thing. When I was a kid, actually, pirated games were a huge deal here. Like you would go into like a stall and there would be rows and rows of like pirated games, and I had no like concept at the time that like these games were pirated, right? I was just like, oh, these games are all here and they're like super cheap. Like you could get like PlayStation games for like 35 pesos, which is like less than $1. It's like maybe 75 cents. And I just thought, oh, man, that's cool. Like these games are really cheap.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, it's a good deal. So the story I like to tell is like that the like the pirate like companies were so advanced that they had their own like branding, and I would choose certain games based on like the pirates that made them. So my favorite pirate company was called Players, and I love them just because like, well, their copies were like pretty good, and they even pirated the logo of the Indiana Pacers basketball team, and so I recognized their logo really easily. And so it was like the Indiana Pacers, but instead of Pacers, it said Players. I'm like, okay, I recognize that logo. You guys must be trustworthy. Which I'm sure they were not, but yeah. That's kind of an anecdote that gives you an idea of how many people actually buy games locally. Now, it's changed. It's changed very slowly, and now there are a lot more people who are like very vocal about buying like original games and like paying the creators. So like last year when we were at a convention, we don't. So yeah, for us, like we kind of almost treat the Philippines as a non-entity, as a market. We don't focus on selling to our market. Our focus is like the U.S., Europe, and like East Asian countries that have larger markets. But we do try to support the local community, so we show up at like conventions and stuff. And at one of the conventions, like we were selling the game Academia for like 50% off, like just selling Steam keys. Just because we wanted to be able to like sell it at a price that they could afford. And the Steam regional pricing actually has been very good for this. I think it's actually really good for supporting people and like giving them a game at a price point that they can actually realistically afford. And like one guy came up to us and like insisted on paying us like full price because he wanted to support us, which was this is a really nice feeling that like the local community is just trying to support you.
So what's the price difference between like what we see in the West and then what it is in the Philippines?
So for example, Academia costs $20. That's like $19.99 US. Here we would sell it for 500 pesos, which is around like $9.99 or like $10. So it's like 50% off basically. If I'm being honest, probably makes sense to like lower it, but like 500 is a good enough amount. I think that like it still feels like it's a premium product. So like anyone who's gonna buy it at least knows that it's kind of a signal that we think it's a good product.
So it's interesting what you said about the pirates and the branding, many years ago. And to give you an idea of how old I am, when you were talking about the Nokia phones, I was working in this industry before there were mobile games. So that's
right.
I go way back. We had a company, one of the publishers that we used in Russia for a while. They started just like selling, ridiculous amounts of units, and we called him and I was like, "So what are y'all doing different?" He said, "Well, the piracy at that time in Russia was so bad." He said, "We finally just embraced it, and we started selling games to the pirates." So we would just they would lower the price. They knew they were getting whatever anyway, so they just lowered the price of the games and used the piracy. This is like physical games, so at the market and everywhere else, they just used them as a distribution channel. Yeah. And
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, that's amazing. That's I always around the same time, around like 15 years ago, like I actually wrote an article about that. I don't know if it's even online anymore. It was on the Escapist magazine of all places. Like I was arguing really strongly for that like, I get it, anti-piracy, like I know that you're losing money, guys, but like there is like this built-in distribution network already. Like they know where to go, they know where who to sell to. Like, why don't you just figure out how to work with these people and give them a cut of the money and like I mean, I guess I'm sure it's much more complicated than I think it is. There's like lawyers to deal with and whatever, but like regional pricing has solved most of that issue, at least digitally. Yeah.
Well, and the fact that you can't buy physical games anymore. So
Right.
you hand somebody a game on a CD-ROM, and they're going to look at you like, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't even have a CD-ROM on my computer anymore.
Actually, I was approached by like a publisher recently who said like they're interested in doing a box copy of Academia, like our current game. And they said that you'd be surprised that like people are still buying it. So I'm like, okay.
So this is
let's
where
talk. Yeah.
this is where the market gets interesting.
Yeah.
Whenever everybody backs out of something, it
Right.
creates a vacuum.
Right.
Physics in game development. But there are several companies now, because when shelf space started shrinking here in the U.S. and Best Buy went from like 4 rows of games down to a half a row, and same in Walmart and everywhere else, and GameStop. Obviously, so many publishers like backed out. They're like, it's not worth it to make boxes anymore. And then you have companies. What is it? Is it Second Chance or Second? There's a company here in North Carolina that does it, and they said, okay, well, we're going to start doing basically. It actually may be called limited run or limited edition games. They started doing.
I think it's called limited run. Yeah. I've heard of limited.
That's the guys that are here in North Carolina, and they started reselling them back into Walmart, and
Right.
because all of a sudden these stores had nothing except for their physical console copies. And there are several companies. I mean, it's not something that you're always going to be able to fully fund a development cycle on. But if you've got,
it's a good additional revenue, right?
Yeah,
like you kind of got to squeeze as much as you can out of every project. Yeah.
I mean, and we had one of the first games that I ever worked on that sold, I don't remember, hundreds of thousands, if not like a million copies. I can't remember how much it actually was with a publisher in Spain back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And we had a game back then. We had to do a different contract for every country because it was all physical distribution, and so you didn't have global digital distribution anymore. And they in Spain, they outsold like the rest of the world, and we were like, what in the hell? They would take them and put them on magazines as inserts.
Right.
We absolutely sold shit tons of these things. So that's one of the things that's interesting is when you start talking to folks from around the world, and you realize that it's not only that the taste in games is different, but monetization and how you sell it and where you sell it is so different as well. So are there a lot of PC and console players in the Philippines, or is it mobile?
Yeah. So like the big I guess like the big thing that the Philippines is known for right now is we're actually a really big like eSports country. Like I'm not super up on the eSports scene, but like who does like the Masters? Like is that Dota or like? And for one of the MOBAs, they have like a big like this global tourney. I think it's called the Masters. But don't quote me on that. But one of their events was held here just because like there's such a huge like esports audience here. The conference I was talking about earlier that we went to, it's called ESGS. Like it's called Electronic Sports and Gaming or something. I forget what the acronym stands for, but basically like most of that convention revolves around esports. So that's a huge deal here. Like mobile phones, like so mobile games, it's a really big deal here. So like for a very long time, like the Philippines was like, if you talk to anyone in like the mobile game scene that was like doing a big launch soon, like the Philippines is like was always known as a good place to like do like a soft launch of your product, precisely because like people would try it, but like they wouldn't pay for it. So it's totally fine to like just test it out here and get feedback, but don't expect like you're not losing any revenue anyways. It's a good place to like test out your game.
I have a story about that actually. So we had a client several years ago who was doing a horse racing game, where you bred the horses, you raced them, free to play, the whole thing,
Right.
and they soft launched in the Philippines.
Yeah.
And numbers sucked. I mean, they were just horrible. And
Okay.
somebody finally turned around and said, do y'all know that they don't race horses in the Philippines? In some places, they, eat them like we eat cows. They were like, oh, yeah, that might make a difference.
That I'm not sure that's. I mean, I've never eaten a horse. Although I wouldn't be against it. There's like so the Japanese have this like random topic. Japanese have this sashimi that's like horse sashimi, and I'm sort of into the idea of trying it one of these days.
Wait, they have a horse sushi?
Yeah. So like it's it's like one of those once in a lifetime things, like that, and maybe blowfish. I'd like to try at some point.
The horse can't kill you. The blowfish. I mean,
Yeah.
Aside from if we get outside the realm of we don't eat horses because they're cute type thing, there's what is that dish called where it's basically raw beef cut really thin? It's
It's a carpaccio or
yeah. So
yeah,
I mean, it's like at the end of the day, what's the difference? But I know I'll probably get hate from that because we don't eat horses. But anyway, that was the thing. It's like, yeah, you're right. They were all these games were soft launching in the Philippines, but when you're soft launching, you have to take the the culture and the localization and everything into it. They didn't, and they were like, oh, this is why our KPIs suck ass. So why do you think? I mean, esports has been around for like 20 years in Korea, and it's really only like in the last 5-8 years really moved over to the US and started taking off in any way, shape, or form. So why do you think that there was such an early surge in the Philippines to esports?
Because we're poor. So then that sort of doesn't make sense, except until you realize that. So a lot of people, and this kind of goes back to like the pirated games and stuff, right? So when people were playing like console games, like I was, we would usually buy the pirated games. Right, and that falls under like the even like PC games were pirated. Everything was pirated, basically. There was. And the distribution networks just ignored us. So like it was like super hard or like way more expensive than it really was worth to actually like go out of your way to buy like original games. So set that aside. Most people here are really poor. Like I forget what the statistics are, but we're not a very wealthy country. So like I'm kind of basically upper middle class. So I could afford like my parents could afford to buy me like a computer or like a console if I got good grades, but most people didn't have enough money to buy consoles or computers, PCs. So what they did was similar to Korea, right? There's a very, very healthy culture of like internet cafes here, precisely because you couldn't buy like a $1,000 PC, say, to play like the latest games, but you could afford to pay $1 an hour, roughly, to play games. And so like a lot of like my college years and like my like just hanging out with friends was spent like in these network cafes where we would play LAN games or like we played like Counter-Strike and Command and Conquer Generals and stuff. Like I kind of phased out of it eventually, but like that like internet cafe culture has kind of remained, and like that's kind of the basis of why these games are so popular. Since they're free to play, right? So you just go up to the cafe, you pay your dollar, and then you can stay there as long as you can afford it and kind of hone your skills. And so like that's definitely one of the big reasons why like the esports culture here is so prevalent.
Is it mainly MOBAs, like Riot, or is it getting more into?
God, I don't know. I'm so out of it. So I'm not super. Like I'm like my I'm at that age where you're what do you call? They have an acronym for like the speed of your clicks or something.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God! Yes, I remember watching the
Yeah.
StarCraft players from South Korea.
Yeah.
That was crazy. How many clicks per second and things that they do.
Right. So I forget which games are super popular, but I mean, Dota for sure is a very popular. There's I think we did like StarCraft too, like whatever usually is like what's popular like around the world, right? Like whoever is basically throwing out the most money at these competitions. That's what's going to attract a lot of players probably.
That was all. That just absolutely dumbfounded me how fast they could click. My son and his friend found some online web-based shooter last week, and he was like, "Dad, come play with us." And I'm like, all right. So I hop in there, and I'm like rolling around this map, and I'm like, this seems really familiar for some reason. Turns out the company that had made this basically recreated Dust from the original Counter-Strike, and that was the map. And they could not figure out how I kept coming out of nowhere and popping them and then disappearing. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you I've been playing this map for about 15 years. Right. And I know this one up one side and down the other. So, but yeah,
it's a veteran move.
What is it like for you and for Squeaky Wheel, running a indie studio outside of the, quote unquote traditional game dev markets?
Like for us, it's there are pros and cons. We have terrible internet, so it makes it hard to communicate. Sometimes cost of living here is much lower, so that's one advantage for us. And in terms of taxes, it's a little bit high. The highest corporate tax rate I think is around 30%. So that's kind of a pain. In general, I don't think in terms of running a business, there's nothing specifically hard about game development locally as a business. In fact, it's maybe one of the few companies that you can start here and be successful. I think without having a boatload of money or it's hard to explain, I think, to maybe someone from the US who's you're much more free market economy, or you kind of tamped down on monopolies and stuff. But here, a lot of the major corporations are run by oligarchs, or people who are really, really entrenched in society. So it's in a weird way, being a game developer is sort of kind of untapped territory. They don't understand, these older companies don't understand how to do it, and some of them have actually tried putting some money into it, and they just they don't know what to do with it. And so there's strangely fertile, it's fertile ground for younger entrepreneurs or anyone who's interested in in building a business to kind of make kind of build a business out of it. I guess the biggest difficulty for us would be access. Access is alleviated somewhat by the internet. I mean, we're talking right now, right? I basically cold emailed you guys asking if I could be a guest on your show, and I did that to just a bunch of this COVID thing is kind of just inspired me to just email anyone that anyone with a podcast. I'm hey, I don't know, I'm not doing anything right now, so if you guys want me on, I'll do it. So that's just kind of proof to show how the world is much smaller now, right? And you can do that with a publisher, right? I'm sure you get 1 billion emails every day from people looking to work with you, and like that's kind of how like we got one of our games published. Although the face-to-face interactions are super important still, even in this day and age. And so that's one place where we're really lacking. Is like access to like like conventions or like places like that where we can like meet people and make connections. Like GDC is a place to go like when you want to like make some connections and stuff, but it's like it's not that accessible for us. So that's one of the big things I think that's going against us.
So I mean that's actually a really good point. And now none of us have access to
yeah.
But we here at Indie Game Business have been doing digital events for the last year, and now they are exploding because all of a sudden everybody else has finally decided they need to do them. I had 4 last week, I have 2 next week. Have you done any of the digital events?
We are actually surprisingly, I was kind of behind the ball on this. Like, I was surprised on Twitter, but like a bunch of people were like, we're doing like the gorilla something, the like event. It's like, what's going on? Like, what's how everyone's like putting up an event? Like, I was caught a little bit off guard, to be honest. So now I'm kind of asking like our biz dev person to like, hey, like, just go around the internet and like list down all of these like new digital events. Like, if it costs us like $0 or like $100 to just join this event, like, why not? Like, that's we definitely could use that to expand our networks. Yeah.
So I'm gonna do your BD guy a favor. We actually track them. And
cool. Great.
That is a list that we came up with shortly after everything started imploding, because I couldn't figure out when to schedule our next event because there were so many other events coming up. Right. That list, within like 2 or 3 months, there's 20 some events, and I need to update it again because there's several that aren't, like the gorilla one's not on there right now. And there's a few others that are coming that aren't on there, and I need to put on there. But if you're out there listening, just go to bit.ly/online game conferences, but you have to capitalize each word for some reason. I don't know why Bit.ly does that, but it does. And if we missed you and you're having a digital event, there's a form on the bottom of that page where you can just enter yours and we'll put it in there.
Nice.
But that is what you just said. That is exactly what I've been saying for a year and a half. When we, about a month ago, when we were looking at all these things, you could go and attend every single conference on that list for less than sending one person to GDC.
Right,
and
exactly.
Now we're doing a career fair as well in a couple of weeks. So because it didn't make sense before, it's like, what if you wanted to hire somebody, but they were, in Norway? Well,
right.
We're all working remotely now, so it doesn't really matter. It is, I love to get people's perception and their thoughts on these things, because even I'm seeing a lot more of them, and I go to as many of them as I can, because it exactly like you said, some of them, our tickets are $50. Right. They're gonna go up as it gets closer to the show, but $50, $100, I'll drop that any day if there's a potential of getting a client or a deal for one of my clients out of it. So it's one of those things that I'm always interested to see how it's looked at across the rest of the world.
Yeah, the thing that I think might be a bit more difficult is like consumer shows, like PAX, let's say, or so like we're actually really interested to see what happens. We just a couple of days ago we got confirmation that we're going to be part of the Steam like summer festival thing for our game, like Rueben Ark. Yeah, thank you. Like we're really pumped up, but now I'm kind of stressed about it because I'm trying to figure out like we got to maximize this shit, because like the Steam, like that like a lot of people are gonna be there. They're gonna be on our storefront. So like I'm figuring out like okay, like we gotta like tweak all sorts of things and make sure that like people are streaming the game while like while the event is going on, so that yeah, like the game's as attractive as it can possibly be. Like I saw this other thing where it's like the stuff where like I kind of like shake my head a little bit and like I don't know. It's like I forget the name of the thing, but like it was the idea was like you would go into like a virtual space and then like they would give you a virtual booth and like people would walk around and stuff. Yeah, and I'm like. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too traditional and like it's just weird to me. But okay, so I don't know. I could be wrong.
I went and we had a booth as Indie Game Business / the Powell Group, and I was the very same way. And we've had people come to us before since we've been doing these things and say, "Hey, look, we've got the next greatest thing, and you're in a virtual world," and very much the same thought as you. It's like, why? What is the point? So I'm wandering around, and now I have to run from meeting to meeting like I have to do at a real conference. I don't want to do that.
That's so weird.
Well, all right, so my takeaway, and you have to keep in mind that Games Carnival from Xsola was like, that was the first time they were trying this. Right. And they were trying it in a game that wasn't built for something like this.
Right.
And so it was better than I anticipated.
Okay.
But they still had issues. But like all of these things have issues when you start. Right. Sometimes you couldn't win, and sometimes your mic wasn't working, and there were definitely hiccups, and there were like 6 different worlds because each world could only hold like 75 people. So if it were put to scale,
right,
I'm not nearly as against it as I was, a month ago.
Sure.
But I'm the same way. I would much rather, with our events, it's time for your meeting. Instead of saying you have to go to East Hall booth 400, it says click here, and you click
and then it teleports you. Zip.
Yeah, exactly. You end up in LA, and that to me is better. But I will concede that it was kind of cool to have a booth, and it was kind of cool to wander around something.
Did they charge for that? I don't remember.
There was a charge, but all the money went to a charity.
Oh, right, like a fund. Yeah.
Yeah, but you couldn't give out swag at your booth. There's no pins or no hand sanitizer.
That's all right. You probably saved a lot of money not giving out swag.
Branded hand sanitizer. That would have been cool though if you could have like gave out swag and then people could like walk around and they have like your pin on or something.
So the problem was there was no way for me to. It's like when I'm on a video call and somebody's like asking about what we do or a resource or something along those lines. I just drop a web code. A link in chat, and it's like boom. There was no way to do that, and so I couldn't really say, "Hey, here's our portfolio," or "Hey, here's our the page for our Discord," or anything like that. And so
wait, that's weird. Like there was no way for you to just send like
no.
Wow,
it was all because it was all voice chat, and so you could.
Yeah,
I think you could click on somebody. I don't know. There was no effective way to do it.
Right.
Well, that's a lesson learned, though.
For a first shot at this, I mean, like I said, it did not work. I wasn't able to log in at all on the second day.
Right.
But it still was better than I anticipated. But yet, Justin Bearbaum from Xsola, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago, asked me after it went, he's like, "How did it go?" I said, "The line at the beer tent was too long, and you need to fix that." That's my feedback. So you couldn't give away swag, but it was better than I anticipated it would be. Right. So, and now I go, all right. So we're like 45 minutes in. We can start talking about what we planned on talking about at some point. You did a whole breakdown with Simon Carlos on the Steam sales for schools, academia.
Yeah.
So now that it's interesting that you brought up the Steam sale or the Steam event because you've got experience doing this, and I just posted a link to the article on Gama Sutra that we're talking about here. So, how, based on what you've already done, how do you think you're going to, attack this new one? Because it says you've grossed over $1 million on School Simulator since early access.
Yeah.
What are you going to change? What have you learned?
So our next game, right? It's actually not. We're actually not developing it. So Rueben Ark is being developed by another local studio, and I was really excited because one thing, just to go back to one of the earlier topics about the local game dev scene here. A lot of companies here, there's an industry, but most of them, the larger ones, are focused on outsourcing, right? And some of them are really big, and they worked on some really big games. There's a company there's a couple of companies that I think that worked on I'm not sure if Epic, but for sure there's a couple of companies that work on Naughty Dog stuff, for example. And a couple of years ago, Ubisoft opened up a studio in the south of Manila. So it's there's definitely an industry, but a lot of the original IP was for a very long time not a thing that was really big. People would try their luck on the App Store, one-man teams, two-man teams, when during the App Store Gold Rush. But in general, there wasn't that ecosystem of developers with experience who want to strike out on their own. You know how it is. There's usually this really big company, and then someone will lose their job, and they'll say, "Well, fuck it, I'll make a game. I'm sure I can do it."
I'll start an indie studio.
Yeah, so it was really, really exciting for me, almost 2 years ago when I saw this Twitter feed, I saw this game, oh, this looks cool, this looks really professional, and I noticed their website was .ph, that's a Philippine, that's the Philippine what do you call it, address. And so I just messaged and said, hey, you guys, your game looks really cool, I'd love to just meet up with you. And it turns out they're based here, and they literally they're working out of a 1-bedroom condo that was a 10-minute walk from where my parents live. So I was okay, I'm gonna come over and let's have a chat. And so they're a really cool team. They're called Maxima. And they're really keen on getting this game out, and so I was actually trying to give them advice. I wasn't really interested even in publishing them or anything. I was just hey, I think your game's really cool. I want to do everything I can to help you guys out. I've had the fortune of being able to talk to some people at even Paradox Games. So if you're interested in introductions, I'd be happy to hook you up. And eventually we just built a relationship, and they kind of trusted me, I guess, because I was really going out of my way to try to help them out. And we had a little bit of extra cash from academia, and so we struck a deal. Actually, that deal is that deal is on Gama Sutra. I wrote an article about that entire deal. The contract is there and everything, and the process that we went through and discussing.
I didn't realize that was you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm really big on trying to make things as transparent as possible. And so what was the original question? Oh, right. So all of which is to say is this is not our game, but we are publishing it for them. What we've learned, I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff that we learned. Trying to think of what's the most applicable. I guess is just make sure that we already have a community that's into the game before you launch the game. So we're doing a lot of community building, and really kind of take advantage of these opportunities. the Steam like Summer Festival. So one of the things that like really is a focus for me is like not being too distracted by like the other online stores, like like GOG has its thing, and a GOG, and like the Humble store and everything. Epic has a store, but like they're not letting anyone in unless you get like the golden ticket. So like a lot of my efforts have definitely been on like getting people to like the Steam page and like wishlisting it, because like that's just where like the majority of the players are. Like for now, like Steam still kind of owns the PC game marketplace. And I know that there are alternatives like Xsola, like selling your games on your own or whatever. So one of my my key focuses like for them was like, let's just like pimp the shit out of like the Steam storefront, and since we're lucky enough to be part of the Steam Festival, let's really work on like how to maximize that, and like, and hopefully that translates into a really, really good launch.
That's so you're doing the opposite of what I tell people to do sometimes. You're only focusing on Steam and not worrying about the other stores at all?
It's not so much that I don't worry about it. So like one of the things I learned for our side was like, our first game was called Political Animals. It didn't do very well. It was like a political strategy game. But that one had a publisher, so it wasn't our money. So yay, like we didn't really lose anything. Sorry, Cliff, our publisher. Anyway, I mean he knew the risks. So like one of the things that I think like was frustrating for us then was like, so we were doing like simultaneous builds for like Steam and GOG, and like their pipelines are just like really different sometimes, and like it was just like kind of a mess, like trying to like consistently like update the builds like on both Steam and GOG, and like we're doing early access, right? So like we're trying to stick to a so one of the things I learned was like you need to stick to a regular schedule like when you're doing early access, so that gamers can never feel like, oh, they've just abandoned the game, right? You need to kind of give them a drip feed of like, it used to be like every month we would release an update. Now we've given ourselves a bit of slack because I mean we built like enough trust, I think, so that we're doing updates like every month and a half. But every time we release a build, we'd have to test it and make sure like everything's working okay, and like that's like enough of a pain for Steam that like doing it for a GOG or like other marketplaces all at the same time, like it's just a pain in the ass for a small team. And when I looked at like the figures for Political Animals, like it wasn't a huge game, but like the amount of money we got from GOG was like maybe 5% of Steam. So like that's the calculation that I made, right? Is like all this additional effort and like sleepless nights, is it worth an additional 5%? Right now, for me, it's not. This doesn't mean like we won't be on those platforms in the future, right? But once version 1 is released, then we're definitely going gangbusters, and all the platforms. We're doing box copies. We're trying to figure out right now like how can we get on console. But at least while we're in active development, it's just a nightmare trying to be on multiple marketplaces and updating all at once.
That's you're not alone. I mean, I talk to a lot of developers who have very successful games. And I'm like, why? It's always been ingrained in me. It's like, get your game on as many platforms as possible. I mean, back when we were doing hidden object games before free to play took over everything, we would have literally 20 different SKUs of the same game because they were going to different portals, because that's how many casual game portals there were back then. So it's always been, in the back of my head, it's like, yes, you have to be on everything to maximize your long tail and all this stuff. But I know, that's me doing it when that's all I have to worry about is distribution and marketing as a publisher. Versus a small studio who has 15 other damn things they need to be doing. It's like, okay, we're going to get the lion's share of stuff out of Steam, so we're just going to concentrate on Steam right now. So yeah,
I mean that's not even goes to mention like so you know there's like the Amazon, like you can put up like Steam keys on Amazon and everything, right? But like I've heard so many horror stories from other developers about like there's such a pain to work with, like for the amount of like customers that they bring in, like trying to get the money from them. It's like I don't want to deal with that stuff. So like
yeah, I
Steam
nearly
has
got
been very good about paying us. So like, yeah.
I nearly got dragged into an internet argument about a month ago with somebody posting on one of the investor websites about how Crucible from Amazon was going to be like the next greatest thing. And I wrote like an essay in the comments pointing out all the things that I'm like, you know, Epic has made a bigger dent in a year in Steam's market share than Amazon has in a decade. It's like they don't get it. They simply don't get it. You know, they bought Twitch. You know, if it's on the AWS side, they got that shit nailed down. Yes, that part they have handled. Selling games, no.
Yeah.
How many people even still use? Do they even still have the Twitter launch? Not Twitter, the Twitch app thing that you launch? It's like no, everybody watches it on the internet. It's not going to be a thing. And so,
Yeah.
I haven't played Crucible yet. I haven't heard wonderful things about it, but you know, I haven't played it. I'm not going to judge it, but I will say,
Yeah, I've never even heard of it.
See, I went through it. Let's just look right now. You know, so if we look at browse, I'm on Twitch looking at live channels. Sort by viewers high to low. League of Legends, Fortnite, GTA 5, Counter-Strike, Valorant, Call of Duty, Dota, FIFA, Minecraft, Apex, Minecraft Dungeons, World of Warcraft. Okay, I'm going to keep going and scrolling. There's PUBG, there's Overwatch. I don't see it.
Yeah,
Is
there's
it even on
5.9K viewers.
So it's
watching Crucible.
Way the hell down the list. And this is on their own platform. So, yeah. Oh, wait, hold on. No, I got it now. 7.1. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's roughly in the top 50. So, yeah.
And it's like if you look on the Twitch page, right, the first row, everyone has, well, there's between 300 and 1,000 viewers. The next row is between 100 and 200 viewers, and everything below that is under 100 viewers. All the other people streaming it.
Yeah, so, I mean, no. I mean, Amazon doesn't, they just simply don't get the game industry. And
Yeah.
they haven't been able to release a successful game. All of their success in the industry has come from shit that they bought. And I'm not going to swear to this. I haven't seen the numbers, or I have, but I haven't seen them lately, on how much Twitch has grown since Amazon bought them. And, you know, I don't know. I don't think it's that much. So, yeah, I'm not expecting a whole lot out of Crucible.
So there's I forget what it was, but there's like a business saying or something. It's one of those like tech bro sayings about like you have to look at your business and like check out, like see where like most of your revenue is coming from, and then see like how much effort like it takes, like, you know, to access like that revenue versus like everything else. And if you see that, like, you know, let's say it takes you 50% effort, let's say it takes me 50% effort to put out a build on GOG every month, and 50% of effort to put it out on Steam, but like Steam gives me 95% of the revenue, I'm better off like taking that 50% of energy that I would have put into like putting up like another bill on GOG and just like, you know, devoting it to something else, like additions to the game or marketing, or even just like taking a nap is probably a better better use of my resources, right? Than like an additional, you know, I mean, time is money, right? But if you're talking about 5% of like whatever, like maybe it's actually legitimately worth your time to just read a book or take a nap, because like, yeah.
So we actually did have a question for you on Twitch. So I'm assuming they're looking at maybe Rueben Ark, possibly Academia.
Yeah, we were talking about Rueben Ark at that time.
Okay. So the games like Prison Architect, where essentially they're spending years developing it, must have a high running development costs or no, and you know, like constant huge updates after release. Which, yeah. So I mean, how big were the development costs? I mean, you obviously made, you know, some good money on the first title, but how do you? And this is a question I love getting into with a lot of developers and publishers. When you're dealing with a game model that doesn't necessarily have a subscription or, you know, free to play mechanics in it, or, you know, constant paid DLC coming out, how do you manage the development costs and then the, you know, post release content costs as well?
So I think I need to clear something up a little bit. I think there was an assumption by someone maybe on Twitch that we had released Prison Architect. And so just to be clear, we didn't make Prison Architect. I'd worked as a freelance artist on Prison Architect, and I kind of used that like as a jumping off point for like starting my own company. And then we worked on Political Animals and then Academia, which is the game we're still actively developing right now. So I'm not sure I could answer the question about like how to manage like basically like do we, and that's kind of something that we have to decide very soon actually, because we're hoping to launch version 1 of the game of Academia sometime this year, and so now we're definitely having those discussions in the team, like do we keep supporting it? How can we keep supporting it? Is it more value for money to like, you know, start on a new game? I mean, just like emotionally and like mentally, like we're definitely like we need to work on something else, because we've been working on this for like 3.5 years. It's been a really long time. But there is like there's still a lot of value to it. Like we still get a lot of people playing the game. It's not like crazy amounts of people playing the game, but like consistent numbers of people are coming and buying the game. So yeah, we have to think about whether it's worth like treating it as I mean the term right now is called GaaS, or like games as a service. Like if we're just going to keep supporting this as long as it's like financially, as long as we financially can, or if it just makes sense to take like what we've learned from this game, apply it to the next game, and hopefully like kind of be better at making that game, be more efficient in making the game, like make fewer mistakes, because I definitely think we made a lot of mistakes in making our Academia.
So, and one of the things that you point out in the article about Academia is that you know, it's not like you've gotten rich off of, you know, the early access, despite the amount of sales, because you still have, you know, folks that invested in the company you got to take care of. You know, you are pulling in a profit, but so I mean, and so it's kind of like along the same lines. Do you have a post-launch content plan for Academia?
So right now, I think what our focus would be is, like I mentioned earlier, that this is when like we're gonna try to get into as many marketplaces as we can, and that's kind of how I want to maximize the IP. So like definitely like, you know, now is the time to go on GOG. Now is the time to go on like I don't know what the other what the other major storefronts are. Like maybe shoot an email out to Epic, like, hey, like we did well, right? Yeah.
Doesn't hurt. You've got them, and you've got Great Man Gaming as well.
Console, we're looking at console also, but that's a bigger investment because the game wasn't really like the UX, the UI wasn't really built for console. So we're looking for a publisher for console right now, actually, to see if if anyone's interested in importing. We don't have any interest in doing it ourselves because again, it's a lot of effort and we're kind of just emotionally tired from working on the game, so we want to hand it off to someone specifically also, and we don't have any experience in console, right? So we have no idea. Also, another thing about distribution in the Philippines, there is no official distribution for Xbox, or I think Sony has distribution networks here. I'm not sure, but Nintendo and Microsoft for sure. There's no way to get dev kits legally. You kind of have to gray market that shit, do some workarounds in order to get those dev kits, or so we're totally happy to give it to someone else. Say, okay, fix the UI for consoles. Let's release it, and let's just do some sort of revenue share. So yeah, that's kind of how we're hoping to extend the lifetime of the game and really extract as much value as we can out of it.
And that's you mentioned it in passing, but that's a huge disadvantage that a lot of countries have.
Yeah,
especially in Southeast Asia and even in South America. It's they just Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft simply. Well, Microsoft is a little easier now.
It's not even just a disadvantage. To be perfectly honest, I find it really insulting.
It is.
We're just as good as anyone else. I don't understand. I really don't understand. What are you worried about? Do you think we're gonna steal something? I don't know.
That's exactly it, and it goes back years and years to when Sony wouldn't send stuff to China because they were afraid it was going to get reverse engineered and all this other stuff, and it's still from that. And so that's exactly it's a security situation.
I want to tell them, you know what? We're not that smart. We're not smart enough to reverse engineer stuff. We're smart enough to make the games. Just give us the dev kits. We're fucking paying you for them, right? I don't know. I get really, really angry when this comes up because it really is insulting. There's no valid reason to not have a guy here, just have one person here to scope out the landscape and do all the legal stuff that you have to do, and then just leave it alone. And if someone pays you for a dev kit, just fucking give it to them. I really don't understand. It makes me so angry, and I feel really insulted every time they tell me I'm sorry, there's no way to really do it, but you can ask these people and they'll figure it out. It's God, fuck you guys. You're not really encouraging us to make content for you, right? Okay,
they're not really. And I remember it's I'll even give him 10, 15 years ago. There were serious security concerns about sending dev kits overseas. I remember taking dev kits overseas to Eastern Europe, and there's nothing, especially when you're not the engineer on the team anyway, about customs in an Eastern European country pulling you out and telling you to explain what this giant box is, and you're like, oh, it's a dev kit. Don't ask me that. I'm just bringing it to them. I don't know how to work the damn thing, So it's I know where it came from, but this day and age, there's no excuse for it.
It's really it's ridiculous.
And it's obvious because Microsoft is hey, look, if you have an Xbox, you have a dev kit.
Right.
So are we seeing the Xboxes get completely reverse engineered and turned into nuclear weapons? No. There was that article. I don't remember if it was on the PS3 or the PS4, where somebody figured out if you chained a bunch of them together, you would end up with a government-sized supercomputer. And I'm like, if there's an organization who has the money and the time and the know-how of how to do that, there's bigger concerns about that organization than the fact that they just daisy chained a whole bunch of
Yeah.
PS4s together. So it is. I mean, yeah, it does suck, and I hate it too. But if it makes you feel any better, like when before the switch on the Wii for the development kits, we had to, even here in the States, we had to sign waivers with Nintendo that said this development kit is in a locked real office at all times. It wasn't, but that's what we had to do too. But yeah, they still don't. Well, dude, I know it's we can keep going if you want to, but it's like 1 a.m. for you, and I know.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can keep going for a few more minutes. Let's do 1 hour and 30, I guess. We're almost in 1 hour and 30.
Well,
so
I have work I gotta actually get to, so.
Nobody cares, Andy.
Yeah.
Indy just announced a new job on LinkedIn. Everybody, it's gonna be a big round of congratulations.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
So do you want to tell everybody what you're doing now, Indy?
I'm working with Vicarious PR or V Publishing, business development. Yeah.
There's children running around my door.
There's children. There's children sitting here looking at me too, or a child.
A child? Mm-hmm. Is it the one? Yeah. We're not going to tell the story about last night and why that was hilarious.
That was funny.
So, aside from, you're going to look for somebody to actually do the console porting. I know some people that can help you do that, by the way.
Cool.
If you should hire us. But so let's talk about launching and how you're sustaining, academia right now in terms of, the early access. How are you, marketing it and keeping everything going on that end? I mean, obviously influencer marketing is a huge chunk of it, but how do you approach the market from that side, especially since you've got another game coming out too soon?
Right. To be honest, I don't have really good answers. Like you would think that like we have this great marketing machine that like we just like keep whipping our players up into a frenzy. But like, I mean, at the start, obviously, like, so when we launched the game originally, like we had our whole like list of like to-dos. Like I did I researched all of the streamers that ever played Prison Architect. Right, I got their emails down on a spreadsheet, and like when we were like a few weeks before launch, I emailed them like one by one saying, "Hey, are you interested? Hey, are you interested? Hey, are you interested?" So we had a good launch that way, and like since launch, our key focus was really just like making sure that, again, like we were consistently updating the game on Steam. So like it just goes back to the argument, like most people are going to find our game on Steam, right? So as long as that storefront is active, as long as that discussion board looks like it's alive and like people are discussing it, we're good. And like the other stuff, the other marketing stuff is sort of like tangential for me, just because like we don't really have someone who's very good. I mean, maybe I'm the closest person like from the original team that's really good at like, or not even good, just like kind of has a sense for like marketing or social media or whatever. And like for a while, like we just have scheduled like, okay, release a screenshot on Twitter on such and such day. Okay, like, make sure to always at least post on Facebook once a week. It's just sort of like a proof of life thing. Like keep making sure that people see that you're alive and active and developing stuff. We used to do one of the important things that we did before that I think was very, very important for us was like YouTube devlogs. And so like to coincide with each update, we would always have like one devlog just to say, hey, this is what we worked on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And thanks for watching, and wish this and follow. Again, that's like the proof of life stuff. It's proof of commitment. that we're not just going to disappear, because that's a big problem with like early access games, like developers just disappearing and like leaving their projects behind to die. And so we wanted to make sure that for us, to build that trust with the players by being consistent about releasing those devlogs and those updates. Now, at some point, like even making those devlogs just became too much of a chore for me personally. So like we kind of let that drop by the wayside. But by that point, like we kind of also built up enough momentum that like I felt a little bit comfortable about like, okay, like if we just make sure that Steam is always like, every month we're updating, I think we're good. And like as kind of the landscape has evolved, I think YouTube is less of an entity now than it used to be. And you can see that from like our viewer numbers. It's become smaller and smaller. But we still do like now that we have one of our younger hires is like, he's kind of more, familiar, and like he's kind of cool with like doing like devlogs. I'll have him do devlogs when we do like some major updates, and so that we can kind of get that cycle going again. I mean, I know a lot of people do like Twitch, like not live blogging, like live developing.
They stream their development.
Yeah, and I mean, we could do that. We're just so like scared and we're so introverted that like we don't like, I don't know, like that's one of the things that we've just not been very good at, to be honest. Like we're only now kind of figuring out Discord, if you can believe it. Like I have been very like not on the Discord train. Like I'm just like I don't want to deal with people like messaging me out of the blue and like demanding like shit from me and like but like it's sort of inevitable.
Fuck alone, okay? Can you just do that?
No, like I know this all sounds counterintuitive, right? But like we're super active on like our Steam forums. We're active about like reaching out to people like who have bug reports. Like we'll email them. It's like, hey, like we fixed your bug. Like we do all of those things, and we're super active with like making sure that like any feedback that's sent to us, I'll send an email back to say, hey, like thanks for sending this in. Like we'll check it out. Like, I have no issues at all with like responding to people and making sure that our players feel good. It's just like at least with email, I can kind of like, it gives me a bit of space to like, okay, I'm going to work on this first, then I'll respond to your email. Whereas like with Discord or like instant messaging stuff, it's like, there's always just so much pressure to like answer them right away. And like, they might get demanding and stuff. And like, so that's kind of the thing that I'm a little bit wary of. But like, yeah, Discord is like it's an inevitability. It's yeah. So we're definitely like now more actively like promoting our Discord and figuring out like how to how to work it into our system, I guess.
So what is your Discord? Because I want to make sure that all of our users know to go to it and demand stuff from you.
See, look, I don't actually even know how to share that with you. That's how bad I am at Discord. So I'm just gonna click on invite. It's called Squeaky Wheel Studio. So I'm gonna copy this.
So maybe it's discord.gg/squeaky. So this is interesting. I was given a talk last night, and one of the things that we talk about when I'm saying go and help find a publisher and how you do it, all this kind of good stuff is, to use Discord as a business development tool, because we do, and it's a really good one. And then I realized it's like, I don't really know how to search and find a specific Discord, other than just typing company name and Discord into Google. It's like, is there a directory of Discord servers somewhere? Because
there's sort of a directory on Discord. If you look at if you go to on the left side of Discord, like where all your servers are, at the very bottom, there's like a plus sign, and then below that, there's a little explore public servers button, but you can't really search.
Oh, I've never seen that.
Yeah. So like I know like I'm kind of I don't know what you call me. Like, people look at me like I'm crazy anytime I tell them that we're not really big on Discord, and like, what are you doing? Like I've dropped the ball or something. And I probably did. But again, it goes back to like kind of focusing on, what do we know and what we're comfortable with. We are actually talking to someone right now who's like more familiar with Discord, and she's helping us like do a little bit of marketing. And so if it all works out, we'll probably like see if we can get her on like like either contractual or full time, so that we have someone who can just really manage that for us. And it's mostly that like we're just so like not a one of us is really super like extroverted or really ready to engage with people on Discord. But like if we can get just the one person who like is really down to do it, then that's great. And I'm hoping that all works out for us.
I mean, I will say it's an excellent resource for developers to, Justin French, we talk about the articles that he's done on building community,
Right.
on many episodes, but that's what he emphasizes. He's like, get your whole community to Discord, and then you can push them to wish lists or live streams or all that kind of stuff. But he's a big advocate for using Discord as your central hub of development, and of community, and then moving people out from there. So I had a question and now I cannot remember where. Okay, all right, yeah. So this will be like the last one. If anybody else has a question for Ryan, we're going to let him go to sleep soon. So, drop it in the chat wherever you are. We'll see it pop up and we'll ask him. So I'm looking at the algorithm change, chart that you have.
Oh yeah.
In your sheet. And there's this like huge spike at the anniversary sale, and then it goes down, and it's in that nasty valley for so long, and then there's a huge spike when Dan TDM streamed it. Was that targeted outreach, or did Dan just find it and start playing it? I mean, how did that come about?
So none of our so one thing that we've never done, I'm not like advocating this or anything, but like one thing we've never done is we've never like paid for streamers. We like our publisher like suggested we do that for like our first game, Political Animals, but I think the ROI is just it's so variable and it's so weird. Like it's hard to really calculate that. So I'm not 100% against like being streamers. It's just like it's better for me, I think, and like better for us. Like if they just find it and they like it, it's probably more genuine on their end, and so that kind of passes on to their players. So we did not like any of like the large streamers that ever played the game. There are a couple. There are quite a few, and we're super fortunate that they did. So there's Dan TDM. Early on, after development, there was Jacksepticeye, and a bunch of other big names actually. And so that definitely translated into a lot of sales for us, but we never went out of our way to like hit them up or anything. And I don't know actually that they would listen. I mean, like, I don't know, like I really don't know if they would have paid attention to our emails, and I have no idea how they found the games. But we do have so we're definitely very streamer friendly. Like we've set up our key mailer, and we've set up our Woovit, and so there are like if any of like your listeners are streamers and you want to get a key, you can check out our key mailer and our Woovit, and so we're definitely very streamer friendly. But in that case, like we had no idea that was going to happen. Like recently we launched like our Alpha 4 update. That's kind of a pretty big update for us. And Gray Still Plays, I think is the name of popular guy. So like for whatever reason he she decided to play the game at the same time, and that definitely helped us out a lot. We so for this last like major update, we have been working with a PR company in Spain called Jaleo, Jaleo. That's kind of an experiment for me because I used to be the one doing this, just like emailing streamers. Like I figured I'll give them a little money, and like I don't expect a lot out of it, but like it's like a small enough amount of money where, again, like I'm paying them basically so I can take a nap every now and then. And I think it helped out because I think maybe it's entirely possible that Gray Still Plays like was kind of reminded of our game because of their outreach. So that was really good for us.
And it's one of those things that when you run a company, sooner or later you got to figure out, when is it worth paying somebody a little bit of money or a lot of money, however much makes sense, so you can take a nap. So the interesting thing is, when you're looking at this sales chart, there was a huge spike. It went from like 50 units a day to 500 units a day, but it was only really for like 3 or 4 days. It's not like you got, Dan TDM played the game, and then all of a sudden you were selling 5-10x what you were selling. There was a huge spike, but then it went back down. So I'm going to crucify this name. Yusoki on Twitch says Discord users are your most passionate fans. They'll give you straightforward feedback without holding back. They really want your game to succeed, and they really want to help. So there you go. You got to engage with them. And so
what? Like, I agree with that. Like, and I know that, but like maybe it's also a personal thing where like I genuinely want to have like this one-on-one like connection with almost like each and every player, right? But that's like physically impossible. Like I can't have that connection with you, right? And so like for me, like emotionally, it's kind of draining to like kind of, and I don't want to be fake, right? Like I don't want to be just like, hey, it's great, thank you for helping us well, and then like just check out right immediately after. Like I need to be like, for me, I need to be genuine if I'm engaging with you, but it's too tiring to be genuine and engaging with like 1,000 people. So like I just my instinct is just to back off. But yeah, I know we're on Discord, so I need to learn how to manage that.
You just need to get some mods, some people that love the game that volunteer to be mods.
Yeah, truthfully. And Leslie the Good says, am I mistaken, or did you do ads on Reddit?
Yeah, we do. We don't do a lot of ads actually. One of the reasons is like because most of our like again we're targeting Steam mostly, right? Like, and Steam doesn't really attribute like sales, so like there's kind of it's super difficult to figure out like what ads are actually working or not. We just put a bunch of ads on Reddit and like kind of like pay the least amount of money for the ads, and like the idea is kind of just to have it always in the background for people. Like we'll get like tens of thousands of impressions every day, and we'll target specific subreddits that are similar like to our game. So like I did some experimenting before, and like people who like our game, people who play Terraria seem to like click on our ads a lot or something like that. And so like, okay, like I'll just kind of shuffle between like different subreddits where there are people who play similar games to us, and just make sure that like when they're scrolling through Reddit, like they'll randomly see academia. They don't even have to click on it. It's just I kind of want to imprint the game on their mind so that, and this is like an advertising principle or something, right? You just kind of keep getting them used to the idea of your game, and if they see it enough, and it's like, oh, like something will click in their head, and it's like, oh, this is a trusted thing. Like I've seen this before, and then when it goes on sale on Steam, they're like, I've seen this before. I'll probably buy it. I mean, that's kind of the theory. There's no way to know if it's working. It's just we're not spending that much for it to really destroy us. It's just enough so that it's. We're spending enough that like people are complaining. There was really terrible people saying like, I hope your company goes like out of business because I hate seeing your ads all the time. And I'm like I'm spending
God.
$5 a day, like $5 a day on some Reddit ads. Like, is it really that bad? Like, some people are terrible.
I've honestly, it's like I go to Reddit, but I have never had a lot of success. I don't understand, especially when we're running something like indie game business, which at the end of the day is there to educate people. I have yet to figure out how to tell people on Reddit that it's here without somebody turning around and going, "Oh, well, you're just promoting blah blah blah." And I'm like, I'm just fucking. I don't. Here it is. If you don't like it, don't watch it or listen to it or whatever.
Maybe that should be the pitch. Here, this is indie game business. If you don't like it, fuck off. You know,
don't watch
maybe that would probably work good on Reddit.
That's probably a good point.
I mean, that's a good filtering mechanism.
I hate Reddit. I don't like Reddit at all.
I am actually not so like, I know, like, so this is sort of counterintuitive, right? Like everyone's on the Discord hype train, and everyone hates Reddit. Like apparently, I've genuinely had like a lot of good interactions on Reddit because there are a couple of subreddits that are like game dev friendly. So like I'll post there, and as long as you mention right away that like when you're like promoting your game that hey, like, you know, just to let you know I'm the developer, like they won't like take it off. They'll just leave it there, and then if people see it, like sometimes they'll ask you questions.
Because it's not game dev.
Game dev is no, you shouldn't be going. I forget which, but like hashtag the Tycoon subreddit, I think it was people really friendly. It was Tycoon games. So you know, so our game is kind of like a business sim Tycoon game thing. So I posted there a couple of times, and like in general, like the interactions with people on Reddit actually on the whole have been like really, really nice. So yeah, there you go.
Well, I wonder if that's because it's the consumers versus actual developers.
Right.
But still, you know, them wishing that your studio to go under because they don't like looking at an ad. Get a fucking ad blocker. I mean, that's not hard. That's, you know, I don't know. I'm with you. There's many days that I'm like, I enjoy getting out there and talking, and then there's days that I'm like, just shut up. Just I can't deal with this right now. Ryan, we are gonna let you go to bed, dude. I know it's It's super late.
I am getting tired.
Thank you.
I'm starting to feel it.
Much.
Yeah.
Man, this has been awesome. You are obviously welcome to hang out on our Discord. We'll make sure you the coveted guest of the show role on there, and then if
then I'll just ignore everyone that DMs me because
I'm going to actually on our server, so we get a rotation of people like DMing you constantly.
Okay, thank you.
So for those of us out there who are the gamers as well, check out Academia. Check out what is it, Rueben Ark or Rueben Ark?
Rueben Ark, yeah.
Rueben Ark. I was not right on either one. So check them out. Ryan has a whole series of really good blog articles on Gama Sutra, so check those out as well. And that's good. We can wrap it.
Yeah, discord.gg/indiegamebusiness and anchor.fm/indiegamebusiness. And I was just looking, and there's something called Disboard. I posted it in chat where you can search.
I think we're on that.
Yeah, well, yeah. Or you can just type in Indie Game Business Discord and it will come up. So if you're looking for a specific Discord, like searching for my Discord was a pain in the ass. Because if you type in the word indie, it's just like 20 billion things show up.
Like the worst SEO name ever.
It is the worst. Man, I should just go by my name. You know, I actually have the twitch.tv/Dan Long. I could just start going by that, but
you wouldn't be Andy anymore, dude.
Yeah.
All right, Brian. Thank
you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
All right,
we'll catch up.
I'm gonna take a nap.
All right, man.
Until 5 o'clock in the morning. Right on.
Oh no, probably until 12. All right. See you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks.